and welcome. Joining me now to talk about Turkey-India relations going forward is Ambassador Torunlar. Good afternoon, Ambassador, and thank you for speaking to WION. Now, we are meeting on the first anniversary, as it were, of the failed coup of July 2016. How do you look at it? Because a lot of commentary about the reasons for the coup and the follow-up measures that Turkey has taken since then.
Thank you very much for hosting me and connecting me with our Indian friends. Yes, you are absolutely right. 15th of July is the first anniversary of the failed coup attempt in Turkey. It was by all means, and also through my eyes, it was the worst day of Turkish democracy, history of modern Turkey. In less than 12 hours, we had 250 civilians were killed and more than 2,000 were wounded, who went into the streets to stop the tanks run by the people who were in military uniforms sneaked into the Turkish armed forces. And their friends were in the Air Force of Turkey, who bombed simultaneously in Ankara the Parliament of Turkey, right, the House of the elected representatives of Turkish democracy, the presidential compound, headquarters of the army, headquarters of the police, intelligence agency, and special forces. And that night, the extension of this terrorist group, they tried to abduct and assassinate the president of Turkey. So it was a catastrophe, and still, during the past 12 months, we are trying to get rid of the trauma of this failed coup attempt.
But Ambassador, 50,000 arrests, more than 150,000 people detained since the failed coup. Is it justified, disproportionate, fair in your estimation?
It is justifiable because it took 40 years, or let's say 4 decades, for the organization who sneaked into the military, judiciary, police, even the foreign office of Turkey. So the more our security agencies find trace of individuals, officials, regardless whether they are carrying uniforms or not, if they have any connections with these terrorist organizations, yes, they are detained, they are interrogated. But on the other hand, compared to the figures you have mentioned, already more than 34,000 people who were sacked were returned and reinstated back to their jobs in the government. And more than 300 institutions were reopened after necessary investigations. So the judicial process is going on. We have to preserve the freedoms, civil freedoms,
right,
but we have to preserve the security and stability of the country. It should go, it is going on hand in hand.
Ambassador, when you say the organization, who or what are you referring to?
Fethullah Gulen terrorist organization, or you can call it Fethullahist terrorist organization, and FETÖ are the abbreviations of this.
And is there any evidence at all linking him or his organization to the failed coup of July 2016?
Exactly, not one, not 10, not 100, but hundreds or thousands. The confessions of the people who were on the front stage of the coup, their telephonic communications, their encrypted links with the Gulen and his agencies.
Ambassador, some countries or organizations such as the European Union or Germany, for instance, insist or maintain that Gulen may not have been personally or directly responsible for the failed coup. Now, critics say, or critics argue, that Turkey is using the pretext of the failed coup to fix its opponents or rivals. Would you would you agree with this submission?
Of course, the claims put forward by certain European countries have been already replied by the authorities in Turkey. So it is not the right place or time for me as Turkish ambassador in India to reply the criticism coming from certain European countries. But on the other hand, it is not an issue in the sense that Turkey is manipulating this, according to our friends in Europe, the so-called coup. But for me, it is a terrorist coup attempt. Thanks God that it has failed by the courage of the Turkish people, Turkish media, all the political parties in Turkey, whether in power or in opposition, because all the members of parliament, at that time the parliament was not in session on 15th of July, but the members of parliament who were not out of Ankara, out of capital, who were in Ankara, almost 150 members of parliament belonging to the opposition parties, to the party in power, they joined hands in the parliament after midnight. So it is not an issue used by the government to crack down the opposition in the country.
Ambassador, we know that Fethullah Gulen was an ally of President Erdogan and his AK party until very recently, till about 5 or 6 years ago. What is it about Fethullah Gulen that Turkey now so vehemently denounces him and his organization?
For more than 3 decades, they acted as if an innocent educational or charitable activity, and they expanded their presence not only in Turkey but out of the country in more than 160 countries. They have built up universities, they had financial institutions, they have prep schools. But when it was discovered by the government that the prep schools are the ground, fertile ground for this organization to prepare young generation, which will be a golden generation in their terms, to capture the rule of the country, to build up a regime in their own terms, but not a democracy. So the government started to cracking down on them. And of course, the processes, legal processes were carried on even before 15th of July, as you mentioned, during the past 3-4 years, beginning from 2012, 2013. So many cases were opened. Many of members of this organization were brought to trials, including civil servants. So 15th of July was their last attempt on the way to toppling down the democracy in Turkey. So they used most of their bullets on one night.
Ambassador, another reason why Turkey is in the news is the so-called lack of media freedoms. Now, many journalists, reporters, editors have been known to be detained or jailed or even made to flee Turkey for safer countries abroad. Now, what is Turkey doing at all to restore the media freedoms, one, and to dispel critics who will continue to harp on this theme going forward as well? So what would you like to tell them?
Yes, I think media freedom is a part of Turkish democracy. Everybody can write anything, broadcast anything, criticize anybody, including the president. But there is a very sensitive line between preserving the security of the state, personal freedoms, freedom of individual, and right to live. If a member of the press in any country, including India, insults anybody, you don't need to be a president of India, anybody, you can go to the court against them if it's an insult. So you cannot put it in the freedom of press. If the press reflects any items against the security of the state, against the security of the nation, against the secrets of the state, then it is not possible to put it in the freedom of speech or freedom of press. So those who are being tried, of course some trials are still going on, that doesn't mean that they will all be sentenced or jailed. Some of them could be acquitted, but You cannot, if you are in the government, you cannot let these people, 50, 100 or 120 people, to do whatever they can do, whatever they wish to do against the state, against individual, against anybody. So they are being tried.
Ambassador, when you talk about terrorism now, you refer to Gulen, the Gulenists and the FETÖ as a terrorist organization. Now, when we talk about terrorism, there are several terrorist groups operating in South Asia, in India's immediate neighborhood. Why is it that Turkey doesn't speak that vociferously against terrorism that India faces, as it does against, say, a FETÖ or any other group which Turkey is supposedly a victim of?
Very good question. I would like to mention that FETÖ is not the one and only terrorist organization that we are facing. We are facing also another terrorist organization, which is Daesh, a new phenomenon. It's a product of the past 4 or 5 years, and it was active right beyond our borders with Syria and Iraq for the past couple of years. On the other hand, we are fighting, and our nation is fighting since 1984 with another terrorist organization called PKK, whose leader is in jail in Turkey, but who has established its bases right beyond our border. But on the other hand, let me frankly tell you that in the Istanbul process, Afghanistan, for Afghanistan, last year in December in Amritsar, I was part of the Turkish delegation, and if I may refer you to the final document adopted in Amritsar, you can see all the names of those terrorist organizations which are directly targeting India and innocent Indians, and Turkey was a part of this process. So we are already there. And again, I would like to refer you to the press conference of our president on 1st of May with Prime Minister Modi in Hyderabad House. He made it very clear that we are on the same line, we are on the same page with India when it comes to terrorism. There is no difference between a good terrorist and bad terrorist. We are on the same page.
Indeed. And just to take off on that point, the last point which you mentioned, what do you make of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's policies and programs and remarks and statements on the issue of terrorism per se? How does Turkey view his statements or his remarks on this issue?
As President Erdogan mentioned, both leaders, Prime Minister of India and President of Turkey, are on the same page when it comes to terrorism.
And when we talk about terrorism, Ambassador, like Turkey would say both Turkey and India are victims of terrorism.
Exactly.
But what would you, Turkey, like to see the international community do to combat terrorism?
Well, there are efforts in the United Nations for finalizing this comprehensive terrorism
for instance, the CC
convention.
Yes.
But I am already 34 years in the service, and half of my career was spent while observing the efforts in the United Nations. And as long as the states do not refer to terrorism of my terrorist, your terrorist, good terrorist, bad terrorist, I think those efforts in UN in New York will never conclude. But it is good that we, as Turkey and India, we are on the same page, and we have an established counter-terrorism working group since, for the past 8-9 years, and they meet periodically, both in India and in Turkey. So we are confident with our cooperation, bilateral cooperation with India with regard to counterterrorism.
And very briefly on the same subject of terrorism, now India says, some countries do tend to use terrorism as an instrument of state policy. How does Turkey view the phenomenon of terrorism being used to resolve conflicts or situations, especially in South Asia?
Terrorism cannot resolve anything, anywhere.
And therefore, to that extent, you are in agreement with India on this issue of terrorism?
We are on the same page.
All right. Now, shifting focus, Ambassador, to President Erdogan's recent visit to New Delhi. Now, I know he spoke about boosting bilateral trade, considering or exploring joint investments, Turkey-India investments in third countries. Could you share some of the progress that might have been made since then?
Thank you very much. Well, Turkey and India both are members of the G20.
Right.
And their GDP total together is about $3 trillion. But the volume of trade, bilateral trade, mutual investments do not reflect the potential of India, do not reflect the potential of Turkey. So immediately after my arrival, while preparing the ground for the state visit of President Erdogan, it was agreed to be realized by the two leaders for the past 18 months, and which was achieved at the end. My priority was to give the weight to this historical visit from Turkey to India on the grounds of trade, commercial activities, bilateral commerce, and investments. And from the very first day that two leaders met in Antalya and on the margins of G20 summit in November 2015, Prime Minister Modi has made a reference for his ideas of 100 smart cities and Make in India. And it was a very attractive two files for President Erdogan. Yes, Make in India, we are ready to make in India, and we are ready to be part of this 100 smart cities project of Prime Minister Modi. We have, as Turkey and Turkish contractors, are among the first 3 in the globe. We are ready to come and to do that. And we are grateful that Prime Minister Modi invited Turkish contractors who were among the 160 private sector representatives during the visit. He invited them to come and work together with their Indian counterparts, partners, during the construction of these 100 smart cities. And both the Turkish businessmen and the Indian businessmen were very happy to hear and to be encouraged by the two leaders in the business forum held on 1st of May 6 weeks ago. Of course, we have to benefit from the experience of India, especially on energy sector. We have so many common areas, but we have to discover them. We don't need to invent the wheel once again. The choices are there,
right.
And I'm sure I am very much encouraged with the show up of 160 businessmen accompanying President Erdogan visiting India, and they already started their contacts. Also, Indian businessmen started much more frequently visiting Turkey and to find their counterparts in Turkey. It was a first encounter. We are lucky for that, but it will not be the last. And I'm sure I'm a hard believer of the relations between private sectors and not the interference of the state in the relations of the private sectors between of separate countries. Once our role should be limited to matching them, then it's like a mercury; it can find its way to flow out. But as civil servants, ambassadors, bureaucrats, we have to do our homework to match Turkish and Indian businessmen. Then, after 6 months or a year, they will never need us, and they will find their cooperation better than we can do for that.
Absolutely. And since Turkey's membership of the European Union remains in a limbo, would it be fair to suggest or to say that Turkey is looking east to countries such as India?
No, European. First of all, values of Europe have always been the values for Turkey and Turkish people since Kemal Atatürk. The values, the founding values, founding pillars of European Union during the late 50s, early 60s, when it was a smaller union, they were the values which was shared since 1923 by the Turkish Revolution. So we found membership to European Union or accession as a full member into European Union as a complementary step for Turkish democracy. But we can live without European Union. Before European Union, there was Republic of Turkey, and not becoming a member of EU will not take anything from Turkey. But in contrary, I believe that European Union will be much more powerful with the membership of Turkey.
Ambassador, one other issue which was discussed during President Erdogan's visit to India was how Turkey wanted India to rein in the activities of the Gulenists, Gulen's movement here in India. What might be some of those activities here in India, and are you satisfied with India's response?
Let me reply first to the last question. Yes, we are satisfied. It could be better. It may be better, and it will be better. So we are thankful for the efforts of India. But let me frankly put that way. On early hours of 16th of July, I can never forget it, that Foreign Minister, Mrs. Swaraj, Foreign Minister of External Affairs of India, had tweeted a couple of times in displaying solidarity with the Turkish democracy. This was very important for me because in my previous capacity before taking my office in Delhi, I was the Director General for South Asia, and I have been following the developments in Turkey, and I can never forget Mrs. Foreign Minister's tweets in displaying solidarity with the Turkish democracy and Turkish government, while some of our friends on the west of the country in European Union, they were still waiting to be sure whether the coup plotters will be successful or Erdogan and the Turkish democracy will be successful. Again, in the early hours of 16th of July, where still the dust was still in the air, Prime Minister Modi was one of the world leaders trying to reach and talk President Erdogan, the Prime Minister of the biggest democracy on the world. If he displays solidarity and friendship to the Turkish people, to the Turkish democracy and its president, it is unforgettable for us.
But just to repeat my question, what might be the Gulenists be doing in India? What about their activities that Turkey keeps referring to?
Maybe without going into details, but as I mentioned in the beginning of our talk, they are established in, it is their explanation, more than 160 countries in the world where they can find suitable ground. So they have been here for a couple of years. And of course, we have a good cooperation with our Indian friends, Indian government, and President Erdogan made it very clear to Prime Minister Modi, and it was also, it was not a secret, it was made public in the press conference. What we failed, what we were trapped last year on 15th of July, we don't want our friends, either in the West or in the East, in Europe or in Asia, not to be trapped in the future. Because this organization was not targeting only Turkey. They are targeting wherever they are active. So we don't want India to be trapped as we were trapped last year.
And another issue of interest to both Turkey and India would be energy cooperation. Now we know that the Indian Petroleum Minister was recently visiting Turkey. How would you describe the current state of play, as it were, in terms of energy cooperation between Turkey and India?
Well, we were the host of the 22nd World Petroleum Congress. It was in Istanbul between 9 and 13th of July. It was held under the auspices of President Erdogan, but by the host was our energy minister. And during the visit of President, it was discussed, and we had got indications that India would be one of the leading participants with a heavy delegation, with a big, strong delegation at the Congress. So we are glad to host Minister of Petroleum and Gas of India. Besides 4 Indian companies, they are conglomerates in their field. They were the partners and participants in the exhibitions which was organized on the fringe of the Congress. coming back to our bilateral energy cooperation, it is one of the topics that was discussed between two delegations during the visit. And as I mentioned, we have many, we will benefit if this cooperation goes on, because India is highly experienced, especially in cheap energy, sustainable energy, wind energy, solar energy. And we have the wind, we have the solar power, and we can benefit from the experience of India.
Sure. Ambassador, I want to draw your focus and attention to some of the regional issues confronting Turkey and India. Very briefly, to begin with, the situation obtaining in your neighborhood, especially Iraq and Syria, where the so-called Islamic State is on the retreat, with the Iraqi forces recapturing Mosul, and now the focus of activity is near Raqqa, the de facto capital of the Islamic State inside Syria. Now, how does Turkey view the retreat or the defeat of the ISIS, and what might it, what might be the implications for the region going forward?
Turkey is sharing a border of 1,300 kilometers together with Syria and Iraq, 360 with Iraq, and more than 900 kilometers with Syria. I was in my office when Daesh, which you mentioned, so-called Islamic State, which I totally reject this term, because in any religion on this world could be hyphened with a terrorist organization. They may call themselves like that, but this is a disrespect to the religion of 1.7 billion people on this world. So may I call it Daesh?
Absolutely.
I remember the day, early hours of 10th of June 2014, when Daesh terrorists crossed the border from Syria into Iraq and captured the second biggest city of the country, which is Mosul. And at that time, in Mosul, there were 55,000 Iraqi army personnel receiving commands and instructions from Baghdad, plus around 12 to 14,000 local police. The number of Daesh terrorists were less than 1,500. So still I couldn't find the answer how 1,500 terrorists, maximum 1,500, they could have captured easily without a single gun shot, even in the air, not to the pointing the terrorists, but in the air, where the military in Mosul left behind their uniforms, their ID cards, everything behind, and fled the city, the second biggest city of the country. Yes, today we are all together as international community and as a member of the coalition against Daesh, we celebrate the liberation of Mosul. It is the success of the people of Mosul, first of all, because they have resisted. I cannot see much people on the world or population of a single city who suffered, lost their fathers, brothers, husbands, daughters were raped, wives were raped, but they resisted as hostages in the hands of a bunch of terrorists. And first of all, I have to congratulate the people of Mosul. Then we congratulate our friends in Iraq, the government of Iraq. And it is a success, both the Iraqi army, Iraqi security forces, and the international coalition. Daesh is not retreating. It is melting, I may say. But even if you melt something, there still remains something at the bottom of the pot. And again in Iraq, or elsewhere in Syria, or on other parts of the world, that I don't know. But the philosophy under different names are visible for the past couple of years in sub-Saharan Africa, in Philippines, in other parts of the world. And still we have the news that the fighters who were leaving the ground are coming to the countries in Asia.
Indeed, Ambassador, very correct. I mean, the ISIS may be on the retreat and may be defeated on the ground, but its ideology remains very virulent, no doubt. But who, in hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight, who do you think was responsible for the creation of the Daesh in the first place?
I think the policies followed by democracies radicalized people. For example, if we go to the records of the terrorist acts that took place in some European cities, towns, France, Belgium, UK recently, we see that those who committed these terrorist attacks were not the migrants coming from Syria or from Northern Africa, crossing Mediterranean, drowning in the seas and reaching the shores of Europe. Please, somebody should correct me. The terrorists who were either shot dead or arrested after they committed these terrorist attacks, how many of them or how many percent of them were the members of the migrants who reached Europe since the Arab Spring of 2011? Most of them are the children of those countries, second, third, fourth, sixth generation, but citizens of those countries. Most of them were very, highly well educated. But the policies should be examined well if we do not face or if we do not want to live again with the philosophy of Daesh for the next 10, 20 years. And we have to address the root causes of this radicalization.
Absolutely.
This is my humble assessment.
Indeed. On that note, Ambassador, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It was also a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.